The central idea in film studies, and arguably the most difficult to comprehend, is that of ideology. An ideology is a worldview, a system of beliefs used to make judgments about society and the world around us. They tell us how society should function and how we should behave. We often take these things for granted as common sense. But every now and again, a film comes along that urges us to challenge these values. Danny Boyle's iconoclastic 1996 hit Trainspotting is one of these films.
For a vegetarian, Rents, you're a fucking evil shot.
When exploring the ideology of a film, we need to consider the connotations present in the narrative and formal elements. We need to think carefully about the characters we are positioned with and the implications of this. For example, from which character's perspective do we see events unfold? And who are we encouraged to empathise with? Does this change throughout the film? In addition to these factors, internal to the film, the emotional and psychological response we have as a spectator is influenced also by the film's external life.
See, a really strange thing is that films are like pop music. There's a certain period in your life when you absolutely understand it.
Trainspotting was a zeitgeist film representing the spirit and energy of youth culture in the 1990s, giving a cinematic dimension to the Britpop movement, highlighting the strong regional and national identities that incorporate what it means to be British. The battle between Blur and Oasis that dominated the press at the time illustrates this, with Oasis's strong Manchester working class image.
I come from Manchester, and so I know all about that culture and that subculture.
Contrasting the Essex, art school, middle class image of Blur.
I haven't seen acting that coherent in a film for a long time.
This new wave of British youth culture seemed to invest a sense of authenticity in the regional accent.
I think it's going to open the floodgates for a lot of really good British films that aren't just sort of Hugh Grant ponting up a hill.
I don't know whether a lot of middle-class Americans are going to get it, or even understand what half these Scottish people are going on about in it, because I couldn't even understand the dialogue half the time.
So it comes to the last shot, the deciding boy of the whole tournament. I'm in a black and he's sitting in the corner looking all fucking biscuit earth.
There was a political dimension to this, which was cashed in on by New Labour, resulting in a 1997 landslide victory.
It's the 19th of February 1996 and the annual Brit Awards are in full flow. And the rather surprising guest of honour was the Prime Minister in waiting, Tony Blair.
It's been a great year for British music. British music back once again in its rightful place at the top of the world.
Until Trainspotting's international success, British films tended to fall under two loose categories: the heritage movie, which ranged from tasteful costume dramas directed by James Ivory, such as Room with a View.
I have a theory that there is something in the Italian landscape which inclines even the most stolid nature to romance.
It reminds me somewhat of the country around Shropshire.
To the middle-class comedy of Four Weddings, and The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill but Came Down a Mountain. Basically anything with Hugh Grant.
It was all my fault. I'm the bastard here.
And also the gritty social realism of the 1980s, a response to the policies and ideologies of Thatcher's Conservative government. You would expect, considering the subject matter, that Trainspotting would continue in the tradition of the latter. Instead, Boyle uses styles and techniques far from the conventions of social realism, viewed as yesterday's cinema by audiences whose first film language is American, and that worship the kinetic work of Tarantino. Boyle, instead, proves that real cinema can be fantasy. Trainspotting can be viewed as intertextual.
Yeah, man, he's about as European as fucking English Bob.
It references a range of other cinematic texts and art forms charged with a spirit of rebellion. Movies that similarly require us to identify with characters that can often be antisocial, delinquent and sociopathic. For the viewer, this is a postmodern shortcut to signifying the ways in which we can understand Renton's behaviour and think of him as an anti-hero. Prior to Trainspotting, representations of the Scots tend towards simple, lovable rogues in kilts, such as this blockbuster 1 year previous.
I am William Wallace, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny.
Please take note that William Wallace is played here by Mel Gibson
Come to fight as free men,
in blueface.
and free men you are.
What will you do without freedom?
Are you serious?
Boyle rejects using inherited Scottish imagery at all times except for this sequence. Here the trip to the countryside is not to invoke the romantic beauty of the landscape, but to provide Renton with the opportunity for a vitriolic attack on how
It's shite being Scottish! We're the lowest of the low! The scum of the fucking earth! Most wretched, miserable, servile, pathetic trash that was ever shot into civilization! Some people hate the English, I don't! They're just wankers! We, on the other hand, are colonised by wankers!
So the film speaks with a decidedly Scottish voice.
Pardon me, may I use your bathroom? Thank you.
But with an irreverence for the tourist stereotype of Scottish identity. In fact, almost all of the football and sectarian references present in the book are removed in the film, stripping a degree of the local identity. They even poke fun at Sean Connery.
All I am trying to do, Mark, is to help you understand that the name of the rose is merely a blip on an otherwise uninterrupted downward trajectory.
He was asked what it was like to be the sexiest man alive.
There's very few sexy ones dead.
That said, Boyle can't resist cheerfully invoking the most cliched images of London tourism that commonly accompanies the arrival of an English character in Scotland. On a deeper level, our own values, beliefs and life experiences give us a personal reaction to the film. For example, this sequence regularly provokes an extreme response from audience members. Why do you think this is? Anyone who's ever been to a festival will at some point have had an encounter like this they're trying to block from their memory.
That was great to film because actually shit, which is the way you experience it as an audience, is actually chocolate sauce, you know, so it's actually very pleasant.
Possibly this scenario even strikes a chord. My point is that thankfully most of the audience cannot relate to the experiences of heroin use, but Boyle still finds ways for us to connect with the characters. The film provokes idiosyncratic responses in all of us based on our individuality and backgrounds. Despite the variety of responses present, the commercial success of Trainspotting suggests that it speaks to a large global audience. making it the most commercially successful British film in 1996.
This is really just another low-budget British costume drama.
When we analyse a text, we aim to expose the ideological foundation on which it's built. This may be present as a moral the director has included within the narrative, but more importantly, we can decode the film to find the values of the society that informed it. The dominance of one ideology is called hegemony. So what do I mean when I say a film challenges hegemonic attitudes? How does it do this without alienating its audience? Well, emotive use of soundtrack and clever narrative techniques keep us engaged in the discourses of the film, even at times when the actions are completely at odds with our own set of values. In my opinion, the final act of the film isn't really about heroin at all. The end of the film is about friendship, and it's about betrayal.
I think it's a film about, a bunch of friends really growing apart.
Nice one, Franco! Shut up, man! Get in my fucking way!
It was about the way men, especially, split from their bonded friends that you have at school or, in your youth, your teens. Men are not very good at keeping those friendships.
Renton betrays his friends, which seems okay to us, as they would do the same to him, right? Everyone, that is, except Spud. Spud and Renton have been the only ones in the group to demonstrate some kind of moral compass, albeit a warped one. It makes them, comparatively, much more sympathetic characters.
The truth is that I'm a bad person, but that's going to change. I'm going to change. This is the last of that sort of thing. I'm cleaning up and I'm moving on, going straight and choosing life. I'm looking forward to it already. I'm going to be just like you. The job, the family.
The hope in the resolution is clearly provided by Renton deciding to conform. In his closing monologue, Renton breaks the fourth wall and addresses us, the audience. At this point, suddenly I realise I am the moral majority. I have conformed. Which makes me ask the question, exactly how free am I?